Interesting. All right, so now we're gonna go right into your wheelhouse. This is a four-seamer right down the middle, ready for you to just turn on.
Okay.
NetJets. NetJets has placed
Incorporated
has placed an order for up to, which like is such a funny journalistic term, up to 1,500 jets from Textron. So Citation, they place an order for 1,500 jets. There are some conspiracies that you have, some theories that Brad has on what this deal entails, the connection to Textron, what this Ascend model variant of the Citation actually is. Brad, what is your theory?
All right, so let's talk about numbers first, right? So if you go and read that press release in that article, it's up to 100 a year for the next 15 years, which is basically 2 a week. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 2 a week. The math is right. I've been up since 2 a.m., so forgive me on math. The number's basically 2 a week. They have the option to take deliveries of Latitudes, Longitudes, or Ascends in whatever mix they want, allegedly. That's what the press release reads like, is that they can choose what model out of those three that they want to take delivery of at any given time. The interesting thing with NetJets is that they're kind of like the 800-pound gorilla in the segment. And when they want an airplane designed or they want to replace something in their fleet, they get it, right? They make Cessna, or they collaborate with Cessna to develop this aircraft, to split some of the R&D on it and kind of work through it. As a result, NetJets also gets these airplanes for a significant discount. There's some interesting history behind the Longitude and NetJets. The Longitude was originally supposed to be a 4,000-mile 0.85 airplane, basically supposed to do the Challenger 604, 605 role in Cessna's world, but they did not succeed in that. It wound up being a 3,500-mile 0.83 airplane, which that's a good airplane, but that's not what the original design spec was. So NetJets was already unhappy with that because they had intended for it to replace the Sovereign and also their Challenger fleet, because at the time they had Sovereigns, Falcons, and Challengers. They had intended for this one-size-fits-all solution.
Do they still have? Do they still operate Falcons?
No, the Falcons are all retired in the U.S. NetJets Europe has Falcon EXs or 2000 EXs, but so NetJets USA and NetJets Europe are basically like shared branding, but almost completely independent operations. They have very different fleets too, or at least they did at one time. They're more synchronized now. But
are they 2000 EX classics or easies?
They are easies. Yeah, they're 2000 EX Easies, which is interesting because the NetJets Inc., the NetJets USA 2000s were early classic 2000s. They weren't even EXs.
Okay.
So, anyway, NetJets throws their weight around with Cessna. When the Longitude missed its performance targets, they started taking numbers off of the actual price per unit that they were going to wind up paying. They were starting to get a discount on it. One of the other requirements that NetJets had is that they had, or the Longitude for NetJets had to have a head-up display with enhanced forward vision system, which is basically combining synthetic vision with FLIR. It's a FLIR camera on the nose and displaying that to the HUD. And the reason that was important was it would allow them to access Aspen all weather day and night. It would allow them to access Sun Valley all weather day and night, and Eagle all weather day and night, things like that, which would give them capability that would set them apart and allow them to market themselves to owners.
No one has that.
Yeah, 99.9% of operators can't go to Aspen at night. They can't go to Aspen when the weather sucks. We can.
Yeah, you can sell your condo and rifle.
Yep, exactly. So that was kind of their thing with it. And then when the Longitude G5000 application failed to certify the HUD, they could not get certification for the HUD in the initial development. I think it is now certified, but with original release and original certification, there was no HUD option for it. When that happened, NetJets threatened to cancel their order. And basically, Cessna was like, we will give them to you at half price, because this is the Longitude's a $28 million list price airplane before options. So the rumor, and it's just a rumor, is that NetJets got all of their Longitudes for $14 million apiece. So that would make sense why they're saying with Cessna, because they've already got them kind of in a stranglehold to say, yeah, if we decide not to buy any more of your airplanes, then you guys are going to go out of business, because
almost literally,
basically,
like, no joke, like Cessna would go out of business.
Yeah, they would, because NetJets just has them in a stranglehold, and they have so much weight to throw around that they can go to Cessna and be like, we want these airplanes, we're paying X price per unit, and if you don't sell them to us at that price, we're not buying any more airplanes. Well, if you don't sell them to them at that price, you're not selling any more airplanes to anybody, because you're going to be out of business.
Yeah.
So that's part one of the conspiracy theory, is that this is NetJets going, okay, we saved you on the Longitude, and now we're cashing in that favor to say that we're going to continue that 50% list price sale for every airframe in your fleet for the foreseeable future, with unlimited delivery spots every week. Basically to say, we own you, right? And NetJets has the financial backing to do that. I mean, if Warren Buffett wanted to buy Textron, he could. And they've got the muscle to back up the words, essentially. So that's part one. Part two of this is they are now the launch customer of the Ascend, which is really interesting, because the Ascend, it's interesting in two regards. One, the Ascend is not looking like an airplane that NetJets would fly. I'm really not sure why they even bought them. My guess is that it's just to assist with marketing and be like, oh yeah, NetJets is buying these, it must be a good airplane, yada yada yada. The reason I say it's not an airplane that NetJets would really buy, they're replacing all their Citation Excels with Phenom 300s. So they started that replacement process almost 10 years ago now, I think, early to mid 2010s. They started replacing the Excels with Phenoms, and they have this phenomenal business relationship with Embraer, but they also don't have the weight to throw around with Embraer that they do with Cessna, because they haven't, basically funded the entire company for the last 20 years. So they have this good working relationship with Embraer. They just signed an option, I think, for 100 or 150 Praetor 500s or something like that, which is the kind of the backbone of the Flexjet fleet too. Embraer product, right? So they have this option for Praetors. They still have more Phenoms. They have more Phenoms showing up every single day. And then they go and become the launch customer of the Ascend. And it's like, why? What airplane are they going to replace with this? Because there's so much mission overlap between the Ascend and the Phenom 300, the Ascend and the Latitude, the Ascend and yada yada yada. The Ascend doesn't do anything interesting, right? And that will bring kind of light to the interesting thing about the Ascend that doesn't apply to NetJets. And I see Bill's pulling up the picture right now. This is the Ascend cockpit, okay? Gear handles on the left side. Yeah. Gear handles on the left side. The standby flight display is on the left side above the left PFD. That is the exact identical layout to the Citation CJ3 Plus, which is a single pilot certified airplane. The interesting thing is, when you look at these cockpit mock-ups and these marketing pictures, you go, oh well, maybe it's a mock-up, right? It's just an artist rendering, which is accurate. It is just an artist rendering. Except for the fact that they took a cockpit mock-up to NBAA Europe when this airplane was announced, and it matched the art. So the gear was on the left, the standby was on the left. It was a G5000 install that was identical to the G3000 in the CJ3 Plus, with the exception of this has outboard GTCs, the outboard touchscreen controllers, which the CJ3 Plus does not. So then it's like, okay, well, maybe they're just trying to standardize cockpit layout, right? Because the 3 Plus has the gear on the left side. They're delineating the light citations from the heavy citations, the longitude and the latitude. Latitude G5000 setup, exact same cockpit layout, standbys in the middle, gears on the right side. Longitude, exact same G5000 layout, standbys in the middle, gear handles on the right side. Okay, so maybe they're not delineating then that. Wonderful. So maybe it's just, okay, we're standardizing the Excel fleet then. Well, problem, XLS Gen 2, which is currently in production, has a gear handle on the right side. The XLS Plus has a gear handle on the right side. The Excel and the XLS post 2003 all have the gear handle on the right side and the standby in the middle of the cockpit. So why is the gear handle and the standby suddenly on the left side in what is supposed to be the successor to the Excel family? And if you look at the airplane, like if you look at the picture of the airplane, the outside, it's an Excel. Like it is designed to be an Excel. They're going to the spare parts bin. It's an Excel airframe with a Latitude cabin that they shortened to 4'8" because they want to sell it as a flat floor, even though it's not. I mean, it is, but it's just short. So it's an Excel with a Latitude cabin and Latitude cockpit windows and a Latitude cockpit layout. But why did they put the gear handle on the left side? It has to be a single pilot airplane. That is the only thing that makes sense to me, is that it has to be a single pilot airplane.
Which is weird, because NetJets can't operate single pilot. Or
they can, but they choose not to.
Yeah, won't. I should say, yeah.
Yeah. So doubly weird because of that, because NetJets won't operate single pilot. Their insurance won't allow them, and their owners won't get on an airplane that's single pilot. But if there's a launch customer... What's up?
Like that, and that's fair. Just like this as a quick aside, like that's like a fair assumption when you're a billionaire getting on a private jet to wherever, that there's two people.
Yeah, I have no criticism or qualms about that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, single pilot jet flying is safe. It definitely is proven to be.
Mm-hmm.
But from a ultra high net worth individual perspective, a corporate risk perspective, it's never going to happen for anybody with more than, mid 9 digits. So anyway, you have this airplane that's clearly designed to be single pilot. NetJets is the launch customer for the reason that I have to imagine they're just hedging their bets against Embraer. If Embraer has an issue with the Phenoms and they can't continue deliveries, or if the price goes up, or if the quality goes down, or yada, 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 suddenly they have a plug-in replacement option for that airplane. The other thing, if you go through the Ascend product page, that's an Excel. Like you look at that is an Excel. Nowhere on the Ascend product page will you find the word Excel, aside from we are excelling beyond, like in marketing terms. They don't mention the Citation Excel Ascend. Like it's not a marketing derivative of what was the previous family of airplanes. So they're intentionally putting distance between the Excel family as they're releasing this aircraft, which is really important, because when the Excel was originally certified in 1998, I think it was, or 97, when the Excel was originally certified, the gear handle was on the left side because Cessna was trying to make it a single pilot airplane. They tried to get a single pilot waiver for it, just like they had for the Citation Ultra and the Encore and the Citation 5. Tried to do the exact same thing with the Excel. The FAA shot that down, said we are not doing that. You are not certifying that, which is why after, I think it was serial 260, they got rid of that option for the gear on the left. Everything was on the right because they accepted that it was going to be a 2-pilot airplane. So that leads me to believe that, one, they have assurances from the FAA that this airplane will be certifiable single pilot. 2, they have designed it intentionally as such. And 3, it's going to have to be a new type rating. It's going to have to be a new type certificate because they're intentionally distancing it from the Excel.
More money, right?
So potentially, but it's more just it has to be completely separate. So that way there isn't this weird precedent of okay, you have the Ascend, which is actually an Excel. So then now everything prior to that is retroactively certified for single pilot, even though the gear's on the right side. And then they try to do that with the Latitude and the Sovereign and the Longitude and everything like that. They're basically, the FAA is trying to fight that precedent, I think. And again, this is just an I think. Yeah. But the evidence is all there. The it all makes sense. And I feel like Charlie from It's Always Sunny with the freaking map and the wires and
It's the
the
Pepe
string
Sylvia.
diagrams.
It's the Pepe Sylvia. Charlie, not only do all these people exist, but they've been asking about their mail all week. They can't talk about anything else but the mail.
Right. Like, I sound like this guy. I fully understand that.
It's one of my favorite
Completely get
episodes of all time. And not even because of that scene, but because of how'd that movie end, dude? Whatever. And then they played that song from the 80s, Day Bow Bow. What is Day Bow Bow? You know, Day Bow Bow.
Right. Yeah, dude, like it has to be single pilot. And it's driving me up the wall.
Why?
That there is no confirmation that it's going to be single pilot. As soon as they say, yeah, this is going to be a single pilot airplane, I am going to throw a party in the streets because I will have called it.
But why? Like that, the part that I don't understand is I get like going back to this shot that I was just kind of looking at here, flat floor. I get that.
4'8", by the way.
Which is hilarious.
Here's something interesting real quick on the flat floor. 4'8" flat floor is the standard. There is an option for the exact same Excel cabin with the sunken aisle for a 5'6". It's an option. I've never heard of that where you have the option of a flat floor versus a not flat floor.
But it's been such a buzzword, I feel like, in the private jet community that it's strictly for marketing purposes, right? Like there's no, it is one of like the top 5 things that I've ever done in my life was fly on a Excel. Like I get it to a degree that a flat floor means that you're in a Challenger 350 or, you know, like it's just kind of denotes the next level up of plane.
It makes a difference.
Well, because
it really
it's bigger.
does.
I mean, it's a bigger fuselage, so there's like inherently more room in it in general. But the experience as somebody that didn't pay for it and, you know, couldn't pay for it, is still super cool. It's strictly from a marketing perspective. But when you look at the cockpit, I have been fascinated by the marketing and sales and development on the cockpit side of things, because inherently owners don't really give a shit. The people that are owning, operating, flying do, and to some extent an owner will want to appease those that are flying and trying to keep them safe. I don't know what the reason would be for this airframe to be single pilot certified, if it ends up being single pilot certified, or understanding that the majority of the planes are going to be sold to somebody that's not going to fly it single pilot ever.
I disagree with that, actually. If this winds up being single pilot certified, the Phenom 300 is in huge trouble, because they cannot compete with a single pilot airplane that has an APU. And that's been one of the big hurdles for single pilot certification is there has never been an airplane with an APU. Never been an airplane with an APU that is certified for unattended operation in this segment of the market, right? So anytime you have an APU installed in an airplane in the business jet world, there has to be a pilot within the footprint of the airplane in order to babysit that APU, basically. You are legally not allowed to leave it unattended until this airplane. And now you can. So why would they do that? To give the presumed second pilot the opportunity to go to the bathroom at the same time as the other guy's getting coffee? Like, no, they're not going to spend the certification money on that. That doesn't make any sense. So it has to be because it's going to be single pilot. And if you have a single pilot airplane that you can put 6 seats in the back, 6 comfortable seats in the back, and if you compare an Excel or this new Ascend to a Phenom 300 cockpit, it is night and day. I mean, it is so much more room in the Excel than a Phenom. And I know this because I flew someone in an Excel who owned a Phenom 300, and he's like, this is so much better. And it's not even close. And the reason he did not have the Phenom 300 anymore was because he wanted the space. And he did not mind the Excel being 2 pilots. Did not mind that. But if he had the opportunity to have a single pilot Excel, obviously he would have taken it. So, I mean, that unattended APU is so important from a certification standpoint, not so much an operational standpoint. I guarantee you it's going to be the same APU in the same box with the same automatic fire suppression and detection. Everything is going to be exactly the same about that APU as the one that's currently installed in the XLS Gen 2. Or now, yeah, XLS Gen 2, that's what they're calling it this week. The one that's installed in the XLS Gen 2, except for the fact that now it says certified unattended. Like, it's literally, the difference is going to be one line in the operating limitations of the airplane.
But what is the benefit of it being single pilot versus the Phenom in general?
Well, the Phenom's also single pilot, right? So if you, in the Phenom's the largest single pilot business jet in the world.
Yeah.
If you look at the size of a Phenom 300, it's bigger than a CJ. Like, inside of it, it's bigger. It's not that much bigger, but it's bigger. If you look at an Excel, especially if you can keep the sunken floor in the Ascend, right? If that's an option. And I would be willing to bet that most people will pick the sunken floor over the flat floor. If you look at the sunken floor Ascend and certify that single pilot, that's way more space. Way more space. Way more comfortable, way more room. That is a lot more space. And that will, they're basically targeting the 2012 to 2018 Phenom 300 owners, because those are the guys, especially the owner pilots, those are the guys who are wanting to think about moving up now. And right now their option is a Phenom 300E or a CJ4. And CJ4 they're not going to do because it doesn't have Garmin. It doesn't buy them anything. A Phenom 300E they might do, but all they get is new avionics and a marginally faster Mach limit, which they're never going to get to anyway unless they want to just pour gas out the back of the thing, which they don't do because they're a single pilot business jet owner, and they own a single pilot business jet that's flown single pilot because they care about the cost of the other pilot. So I don't see any world how this couldn't be a single pilot airplane. It doesn't make any sense for NetJets to be the marketing customer. Like, that's part one of the conspiracy. Part two is that it's a single pilot airplane. It doesn't make any sense for NetJets to be the launch customer for it, unless they're planning on replacing their Phenoms or they're hedging their bets. But I mean, it could also just be marketing.
But does NetJets operate their Phenoms single pilot?
No, and they don't have to. And it's the same thing as this. You would have the option to not operate a single pilot, right? But no, NetJets does not do any single pilot flying.
I mean, could you, this is like my ignorance of the whole system, but is there any benefit for like a Part 91 repo single pilot that provides any, is that even worth worrying about?
No, not really. I mean, there may be an edge case in 1 out of 10,000 flights where it would make a difference, but it's never worth marketing or planning on,
It seems so.
Makes no sense. Makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Okay. So, Oh yeah. All right. So my limited knowledge of everything that you just explained, my feeling of I don't get it is correct.
Yes. And there's one more big piece of the puzzle of this order, which is really interesting. It's 1,500 airplanes, right? That's 100 airplanes a year for the next 15 years. 1,500 airplanes. The totality, the entirety of the current NetJets fleet is 780 airplanes.
So what are they booting out in droves?
Yeah. Are they doubling? And NetJets can't hire pilots right now. So are they doubling fleet size while also getting rid, like, are they going to try to replace Globals with Longitudes? No. Are they going to try to replace Challenger 650s with Longitudes? No. Are they going to try to replace Challenger 350s or 3500s with Longitudes? Maybe, but they still have another 100 Challenger 350s on order too. So, I mean,
well, commercially speaking, and this might be like really inside baseball, commercially speaking, who is stronger between Embraer and Textron in terms of sales and development and product launches and support? Like, who's on the up, who's kind of contract.
Textron's got a major PR problem right now. They are seeing unbelievable turnover in their service center and sales departments. They're losing a significant market share. So for the last 16 years, the most hours flown on any model of business jet in any particular year was always the Excel. The Citation Excel family was the most popular business jet in the world for a decade and a half straight. 2023 is the first year where it's the Phenom 300. So this could be part of that, where it's like, okay, we're stabbing back at that. And I will say to take those numbers with a grain of salt, because the Phenom 300 now being the most flown business jet in the world, the most operated business jet in the world, is that way. That's because crazy. NetJets replaced all of their Excels with Phenom 300s. Like, if NetJets had kept their Excels and not gotten Phenom 300s, it would still be the Excel. But all the Excels, or almost all the Excels, are gone now. It's all Phenom 300s. They just ordered more of them. FlexJet operates like 100 of them. AirShare operates a dozen or so of them. Like, everybody's operating Phenom 300s because Embraer loves to sell fleet discounts. They love that. That's why FlexJet has all the Praetors and has all the Legacies. That's why NetJets just bought 150 Praetors or whatever it is.
Could it be as simple as like you said, NetJets has a ton of weight to throw around with Textron, and if they're going,
I think that's 100% it.
If they are looking longer term than even just the 15 years, like beyond the 15 years, but on like a year by year attrition cycle through rate, if they're thinking, if we buy a bunch of single pilot capable planes that we're going to operate with two pilots, by the time we phase these things out down the road, they're going to be worth more to us on the resale market as single pilot planes than, because I think, now this is anecdotal from what I've heard you say, Phenom prices are super high in the secondhand market versus Citation, right? But if you had, is that true?
Phenoms were inflated for a while. That market has recently fucking bottomed out. It's like, it has tanked. I'm starting to see business jet pricing back closer to 2019 than we've seen for the last 3 years. It's that market has tanked. But with that said, it's kind of a moot point. And the reason why is because up until 2020, I think it was, 2020 NetJets had a shift in their fleet retirement plan and their fleet retirement SOP. Prior to that, they would sell the airplanes that they retired. So all of those gray and black and red and white painted Falcon 2000s you see floating around, those are all former NetJets Falcon 2000s. There are a number of former NetJets Challenger 604s and 605s floating around. There are 50 plus NetJets Citation 10s floating around. The company I used to work for has one of them. Mountain Aviation had 37 of them, I think, is how many they bought. Wow. Like, that's what put Mountain on the map, was buying those 10s and just blowing it up, basically. Exojet had all of them too. Like, all of Exo's Citation 10s were former NetJets. So like, what happened was in 2020, there's one specific example which really was kind of crazy. They retired one Sovereign from NetJets that wound up, so obviously they retired more than one, but the one that I know of, it was for sale for 2.4 from Textron resale, or from Cessna resale, for 2.4. It got bought by the Ritchie Group in St. Louis. Paint, interior, turned around and resold it for 4.9 after putting about after putting about 500 grand into it, if that, maybe. Turned around and resold it for 4.9. So the 10s were a large part of it, but the straw that broke the camel's back was that Sovereign, because they were tired of having to compete against their own airplanes. And, they I'll give you the perfect example. One of the clients that I fly for, it's a large corporation, it's a publicly traded corporation. They have 2 or 3 shares of NetJets airplanes that they use as supplemental lift for their actual internal flight department. They also have a charter account with Wheels Up, which is now Mountain Aviation, all those Citation 10s. So
They're
they
Mountain
charter from
Aviation
NetJets.
now.
What's that?
Wheels Up rebranded?
Wheels Up bought Mountain Aviation before Wheels Up started going downhill.
Got it.
So Mountain Aviation, actually, hang on. I might have gotten that backwards. Fact check me on that, because I think my fatigue might be getting to me on that one. Either way, it's all these Mountain Aviation Citation 10s that show up. And they literally, it's the same company buying the same thing for the same reason that NetJets is competing directly against. And if those airplanes did not exist, they probably would have sold 1 or 2 more shares of airplanes. So, you can see why they would be pissed off about that. When they saw the Sovereign get painted, interiored, and resold for literally double what they sold it for, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So now, instead of selling the airplanes, reselling their fleet, they're scrapping them. So everything that gets retired out of the NetJets fleet gets scrapped now.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's why I say the resale value of these airplanes, unless there's another policy shift back the other way, the resale value of these airplanes will be nearly zero. It'll just be a write-off.
Wow. Okay, and Wheels Up did acquire Mountain Aviation.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Fatigue brain, not quite there yet. Excellent.
So they, in order to protect themselves from their own planes going into market, competing against themselves, they scrap them.
Scrap them. Yep. Scrap them. Sell them for parts.
So the opportunity cost is worth more than the actual planes themselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at it, and I can give you ballpark numbers because I have seen them for clients, an eighth share of a Latitude a couple years back was about $1.25 million.
Yeah. So it's a couple, it's like 6 months worth of one plane.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So if you scrap the airplane and you sell 2 more shares of another airplane because that airplane is not available on the charter market, it has literally just paid for the resale.
Yeah. So why would you not do that?
Right. Yeah, it makes total sense. It's frustrating because those resale airplanes, for the longest time, I mean, one of the Citation Ultras I fly was a NetJets resale. Half the Hawkers you see flying around were NetJets resales. Those white and gray Encores at ACI South? Yeah. Those are all NetJets resales. That has supported a lot of the, I don't want to call them lower budget charter operations, but the not premium charter, the not share sales operations, like that has been the backbone of those fleets for a long time.
Yeah.
So come probably, I would say 2030, maybe before then, there's going to have to be a huge, huge shift in how these companies manage their fleets. And I think it's only going to make NetJets and FlexJets stronger because they have the money to go out and throw their weight around and buy airplanes to replace those that are missing in the market.
It's got, I don't know how closely you followed that conversation earlier today on the EVs. That whole
I wasn't really paying attention.
Yeah. So I'll spare everyone from the apocalyptic rant that I had against EVs. But I'm a super car guy, so I still don't think I'm as knowledgeable on the automotive industry as you are with aviation, even though granted it's a little bit tighter group. There's not as many aviation companies as there are car companies for obvious reasons.
Right.
But from an environmental standpoint, my stance is that EVs are horrible for the environment and are selfishly bought by people that are claiming to be environmentally sound when really they're just interested in the convenience, which they have abundance of convenience for EVs. You don't maintenance costs and you don't have to go to the gas station and all that kind of stuff. It's not about environmental. If you wanted, which I am a proponent of, being less harmful, wasteful for the environment's sake, you would repurpose older cars. You would buy an old Mercedes diesel and you'd redo the interior, and like that, the energy used to create that car has already been expelled. So like you're just repurposing things, recycle, all that kind of crap. That actually has a detriment to the stuff that I love, which is new cars. I want car companies to thrive. Like I want Alfa Romeo to come out with more cool, interesting stuff. So in order for that to happen, you have to have an economy that's promoting the purchase of new vehicles to help sustain the companies making new stuff. So it's like a give and take, even with what you're describing here with NetJets. If you have NetJets that made a business case to, we're going to scrap the airplanes instead of reselling them to have a competitive advantage, it's helping to promote the creation of new products like the Ascend. Say whatever you want about the relevancy or necessity of having that particular plane versus an XL.
Specific to NetJets, I might add, because it will absolutely, the single pilot factor will absolutely be relevant, but not to NetJets.
Right. Not to, yeah. Well, oh yeah. And I mean more of, like the flat floor and just like the particulars of whatever makes this not an XL kind of, it's like superfluous to just get an XL. But that is employing a bunch of people at Textron making new airplanes. And, just the aviation industry in general is so expensive because the volume is so low, because all these planes are being repurposed. You have two planes that are freaking 50 years old. You didn't walk into a Cessna showroom and said, give me your, I want a white and blue Cardinal.
Right.
It's completely different than the automotive industry, where you have these super short life cycles of ownership for a lot of people, that I'm kind of torn between the two. Like, yes, it is wasteful to think of NetJets scrapping a perfectly good Ascend or whatever the hell that could live a very fruitful life with some other operator, employing pilots and, transporting people and all that kind of stuff. That is, a negative, but a positive is it's creating new planes. Like, we get this awesome freaking cockpit. Like, I mean, how badass is this cockpit? Like, you couldn't retrofit. I'm correct me if I'm wrong. I mean this kind of like sarcastically to a degree, but like, you can't do this to an XL. If you could, it would cost so much money that no one's really going to realistically do it.
They do. That is, I get what you're getting at. That just happens to be one of the specific examples where it actually does happen and does make sense. But it's an avionics retrofit, not a cockpit and capability retrofit.
Fair enough. Right. So any of the certifications, so like speed, capacity, range, all that kind of stuff,
we're putting lipstick on the pig.
Right. Remains exactly the same. So yeah, fair point. So it enables Cessna to go back to the drawing board to an extent and recertify and change things and update, because from a lot of the stuff that you've explained, some of the capabilities on airplanes is only a certification, not necessarily a capability question. Like, the plane will do.
Common.
Yeah, the plane will do. I mean, talk about the 10. That plane will go beyond Mach 1. But
it flight tested supersonic.
Yeah, but the expense to certify it at that is too expensive to make it worth doing that. And like, there's no real efficiencies in doing that. It's just kind of, it's like Koenigsegg's going 260. Like, no one's actually going to do that, but it's kind of cool to say you can do it. So this gives an actual commercial reason to push the limit of the airframe that it can actually do, or not push the limit, but extend the limit of existing technologies and airframes, and have it actually be supported by new aircraft sales.
Yeah. It also is kind of a catch-22, right? Because Cessna's production line capability is like 3 airplanes a week, 3 maybe 4, and that's a stretch. So now NetJets is going to be owning at least a half, possibly 2/3 of the entire Textron production capacity for the next 15 years. Granted, it won't work out in reality that way, because if you want to go and buy a Latitude today, today's September 27 of 23. If you want to go buy a Latitude today, your first delivery slot's going to be Q1 of 25. But there are a gazillion NetJets deliveries between now and 2038, right? So what they do is they say, okay, NetJets, you're getting 100 a year. We have 3 delivery slots a week. This week we're giving you 1, and we're giving 2 retail customers Latitudes. Next week you're going to get all 3 of them, right? So that way it balances it out that way, and it just, that's how they handle it. So they can move NetJets delivery slots around to meet the needs of retail clients, but even then they're still so backed up with required deliveries for NetJets and for other companies, for other fleet sales, that they can only move the timeline up so much, because there's only so many delivery slots. There's only so much space in the hangar. There's only so much space on the assembly line, and it's kind of a catch-22 in that regard, because you are going to be encouraging the development and the proliferation of these airplanes and of new aircraft sales. And if we get a higher volume of new aircraft sales, then in theory you should have a lower price per unit.
Yep.
Asterisk. The majority purchaser of all of these units is getting them for half price anyway. Yeah. So, you're not really going to see that effect, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think what you will see is that you'll see Bombardier is going to start selling more airplanes in the U.S. Falcon's going to start selling more airplanes in the U.S. Embraer is going to start selling more airplanes in the U.S. And I think if Embraer was smart, they would find a way to put an APU in a Phenom, even if it's not single pilot. Because if they can find a way to put an APU in a Phenom, or basically create a baby Praetor, right, like a Praetor 400 instead of the 500, an Excel competitor, essentially, they would sell gangbusters, because Embraer is always cheaper, and you'd be able to get one before you die of old age. So I think that would be a really interesting, or would be a really interesting change. I was expecting Falcon and Dassault at some point to come out with a Falcon 20 replacement. They have not done that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Bombardier tried to get into the mid-size market with the Lear 75. I shouldn't say that. They tried to stay in the mid-size market with the Lear 75. That was a colossal failure, but I think that was just timed poorly. Also, the Lear cabin is dated, so if they went something like clean sheet, but in the same size range, the same cost range, I bet they would see significant success, just simply based on the delivery delays for all of the Textron products.
That was fascinating.
Hot air, man.
Dude, I like it's your world 100%, and it's super cool to see, something that's a pretty standard, up to 1,500 jets, net fleet, net jets, whatever.
Yeah. What does that actually mean?
What is the actual story behind that? It's really, really pretty cool.
Yeah, and I have to stress that this is all speculation, right? Like, I don't have insider information. I'm just reading the way the cards are on the table right now, and looking at the totality of the picture based on what I'm hearing from everybody I know who's buying new airplanes, who's dealing with service, who's dealing with Embraer, who's dealing with Textron. And, the totality of the information available to me is what suggests these conclusions.
Yeah. It's just like those nerds that go frame by frame and break down movie trailers. Oh, those are the gloves that they had in the comics, so this is definitely going to be this era of it's this full on, like, look at the lever,
and then they're right.
And then they're right. Yeah, I mean, it's a noticeable enough difference that something is up with that. Like that is That is not something you would just change unless something else has actually changed.
Right. And I mean, I've seen, hang on, I'm looking for, I'm sending you a picture of the actual cockpit mock-up for the Ascend that was at NBAA Europe. So you can see this is the real mock-up. That's the real thing they took to the trade show. And it matches the pictures.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't just some like render guy that just put the lever in the wrong spot.
Yeah, the art guy did not copy the CJ3 Plus homework. That is the real cockpit layout.
Yeah, it's identical. Yep. Yeah. So this is the real one. When are we gonna know? Like, when are we gonna actually know when that certification comes out?
So the other interesting piece of that press release was that deliveries are expected Q1 of 25. That's a relatively aggressive certification timeline for a what I think is going to be a clean type certificate. It's not going to be on the 560 Excel type. So I would expect to know probably by Q2 of 24 whether or not they're going to have a single pilot.
All right.
And if it doesn't wind up single pilot, I would expect a significant cockpit redesign.
You think they'd actually move that?
Yes, I do. I think they'd have to.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I think they would.
All right. Well, stay tuned for Q2 24. Brad Smith, calling the shot right now. Single pilot Ascend.
Yep. I'll even go one further. Q2 of 24, single pilot Citation Ascend CE 600 model number.
CE 600. That is quite the shot. Oh, okay. All right. That's badass.